Anyway, we eventually got out of the canyon with minor violent encounters. The wave of blood was certainly the horrifying highlight. But as we came out of the canyon, we realized what we had been heading towards. As the last bit of rock turned from our field of vision, we got a clear look at one massive ginormous valley. Immediately after our rocky stone path, the stone began showing signs of being intelligently worked. It followed regular patterns leading down, all the way to the bottom, at which there was a massive keep, the size of a city itself. Its towers stretched to the top of the valley, where the stony mountain/hills made it blend in with the naturally occurring peaks. It was covered in jagged patterns that looked like some kind of massive defensive shielding, or violent siege weaponry, or possibly both. Spikes everywhere. We instantly got the feeling that this had been a very bad idea. From a ways up ahead, marching down the spiraled stones leading to the keep, another group hailed us, waving hesitantly. We started climbing down, and they climbed back up a short distance. We approached very hesitantly, but they were just as hesitant. I think we were the more fearful-looking group, with our rune-covered golem, our spider-riding paladin in black armor, our, by this point, clearly dead and stitched-together rogue ragdoll, and the rest of us weren't exactly the most normal batch. Plus we had a prisoner bound head to toe in spider silk. They were a smaller adventuring party, and an intentionally humorously generic one. An elf wizard, a halfling rogue, a dim-witted-looking half-orc with an axe, and a human in tattered priestly robes. They had a fifth person with them, not counted in the initial description. A ragged and tired-looking man who looked like he was covered head to toe in shadows, staring blankly at the sky. We exchanged stories, but I'm sure you can guess. They heard the call of the breeze too. They were adventurers as well. In fact, the archivist, priest, and paladin had all heard of each other in church documents, though they didn't share a faith. Quote the priest? That seems like ages ago. Anyway, yeah, they had one of the tenebrous vestige bound with them. They heard the same breeze we did, and decided to follow it as well. As we talked, I spotted a small group, no pun intended, emerging from another rocky outcropping a distance across the valley. They were kobolds, all of them. And one of them? Yeah, covered head to toe in shadows, being dragged along by two others. We were, apparently, where we needed to be. We actually all, both groups, caught up the kobolds, who sneered and hissed at us, though one did make a small bow towards our dragon shaman. They huddled together and mumbled something in a reptilian tongue before nodding. One of them approached us, and said in stunted common, "We hate you." Awesome. Straight face, he added, though, must work with, and the kobolds began marching with us. Ah. Well, it doesn't take an 18-int to realize what he meant. He was right too, this was bigger than whatever they hated humans for. So we marched on down the spiral path. We saw others inside the keep, sparring, meditating, some of them looked to be adventuring parties too. As we came up to it, a knight on horseback came out of the front gate. He had a strange symbol painted on his shield, it looked almost like a seal. The archivist, outside the game, gets a note from the DM. And immediately says that he screams blasphemer, and picks up a rock and pitches it at the knight as hard as he can. Rolled a 17 too, still not enough. The knight knocks the stone aside with his shield and whispers, "Your reaction is not surprising, but is nevertheless too hasty. Archivist, you're a heretic." Knight/binder, still whispering, "No. Archivist, asterisk to us he's a binder. He's one of the ones responsible for this mess." KB, whispering harshly, "No. Archivist, your kind has finally ruined the world." And the binder hisses no again. From him, comes a fierce come of wind that knocks all of us, kobolds and all, back 20 feet. The archivist draws his crossbow pistol, but the binder hisses, "Stay your hand and have patience, we are not responsible for this and seek to see it ended." The archivist reluctantly tucks his pistol back away, and we go with the knight into the keep. Then we get to trade expositions. The keep is a stronghold for Knights of the Sacred Seal. Vestige worshippers. But when all of this began, most of the members of the organization, which was a collection of knights worshipping several vestiges, either left or were driven off. When it was realized that most vestiges were no longer answering their calls, and the role some of them had in this mess, well, things got hectic. A lot of them even committed suicide. It's taken this long for them to get everything straightened out, and order restored. They're a skeleton crew now. Only two groups of knights remain in the keep. The Knights of Orthos, and the Knights of Halifax. Both of the 8th level vestiges. And the only 2 vestiges who are still answering the call and making pacts with binders. They could leave the void. But they don't. Halifax is so indifferent to the whole thing, that he sees no point. Orthos, well, Orthos is called the sovereign of the Howling Dark in the book for a reason. He's quite probably the original vestige. The nothingness is his domain now. Those 2 vestiges are staying in the void willingly, not trying to escape, and making pacts just the same as they always have. It's the lesser vestiges that are taking the opportunity to escape. The greatest vestiges? Whatever. So fitting. So the knights are still in order, and both vestiges, Orthos in particular, want the breach, the veil returned to normal. It wouldn't bring the dead back to life, and it may or may not kill the undead currently marching around with vestiges driving their corpses, but it would at least mean that vestiges killed would either re-enter the void, or cease existing entirely. So, we're in the keep of the binders. We all get rested up in shifts, the groups organize themselves, a lot of the adventuring parties actually joined into bigger groups, the ones who suffered casualties especially. We also went up a level, for finding the keep, so that was cool. We spent a while discussing various plans for fixing the problem, you know, the world is over problem. That little thing. None of it really sounded, positive. Live free or die, entreating the always eager unholy forces for aid, become their servants for protection and a new home. Quote the archivist, you seem very ready to make pacts with evil creatures, no surprise there. Noah's Ark, attempting to cobble together as a group, circle the world looking for survivors, and physically shunt everything alive into some other plane of existence, to buy us breathing time. Quote the dragon shaman, abandon the entire world. Martial law, go military and try to eradicate every undead creature we could, while keeping living creatures under close watch on various buddy systems and legal restrictions, destroying new corpses immediately, and trying to fan back out. Quote the Warforged, they all sound fine to me. Of course, any plan involves facing the inevitable. Praying Arcus doesn't find a way to kill Graz'zt's thralls and free himself from the void, and knowing that sooner or later they'll die of old age anyway. We're not in a very strong position on the table here. What's more, it starts coming out that we're facing some very serious, and very rapidly approaching threats. No one was quick to mention it, but an adventuring party said they've been stalked for days by a massive band of Arcus cultists. Way too many for them to fight, they only got here by thinking on their toes and moving fast. Our Duskblade says, that's not a problem, there's plenty of us now, banded together we can stomp them out the second they show their faces. The bard scratches his head. There's the dancer too, remember. He's tracking us down, and he won't stay dead. Will that be a problem? The binder knights kinda freak out at that and ask for details. Oh gee, yeah, Paimon, the vestige, has a physical form that won't stay destroyed and is tracking us as we speak. Not to mention the handful of other vestiges given flesh who we also had to tangle with. Then I have to mention, the rogue/jester vestige is also ticked off at me personally, because I was supposed to be his body. Before anyone can even react to the idea that we've got vestiges physically in the world, and coming here specifically, the kobold that knows common speaks up. Master. Ours master, he dies. Humans kill him. Comes for us. So we're like, aw crap. You know what that means. Undead dragon, head in this way. Huntin' kobolds. Then everyone else starts piping up too. Vestiges, hordes of undead, a massive band of trolls of all things, that are still alive by the virtue of refusing to stay dead when they get torn apart by the undead. Seemed like every adventuring party had at least one thing hunting them through the woods leading to this point. Then something else crosses my mind. Eli. Yeah, by the way, there's this undead wizard. He's a diviner specialist, knows us personally, probably has this place scried to the last inch, might be contacting God knows what to stop us from whatever we're doing and may or may not be listening to any plan we concoct. Everything gets really quiet. We hear a gurgle and look over in the corner it came from. One of the adventurers killed himself in despair. Oh, yeah, yeah. Fantastic. Wait. Crap. Burn the corpse. The dragon shaman, thinking on his toes, he's getting better and better, it's comforting to see him coming into the group, immediately hits it with an acid breath that dissolves it almost to nothing. It's still twitching, but we all just immediately pounce. A sorcerer hit it with a fireball, A cleric hammered one of the bones that went flying. We turned it into dust within seconds. It was kinda comical, except not. It was also very depressing. Kinda. Yeah, things were awkward for a while. Anyway. Given that new bit of information, the walls have ears, the arcane mages grouped together to discuss sure ways to get us some privacy, ways that can't be beaten by the other person knowing about them, 'cause heck, any plan for privacy we come up with he might be listening to. The binders mention that they do have one plan, that they're glad they haven't elaborated on. Then they tell us that everyone needs to start preparing. War is coming, after all. The archivist pulls us aside, and mutters something about Orthos, then asks us if we know anything about Halifax. Dragon Shaman, oh yeah. Everything. In detail. But you know, maybe you should refresh our memories. So the archivist mentions stuff you can find in Tome of Magic, metagaming versus role-playing here. Halifax was a gnome, who specialized in building defensive structures. At one point in his life, he was blackmailed into using his defensive structures against his own people, keeping them as slaves to prevent someone he cared about from dying. That's part of how he became a vestige. The archivist ends his little comment about it with "Don't trust them. None of them." Still, the archivist heads off with the binders to discuss what to do and prepare some war spells. And the rest of us take watch around the keep. Already we get the feeling that this is the calm before the storm, because that's exactly what it is. And boy did we need some of it. But this next bit actually really tickled me. We notice a little commotion on one side of the courtyard. Nothing major, just activity besides moping under the heavy weight of an entire world suffocating and collapsing, and there's not a damn thing we can do about it, and oh god, the horrible crushing feeling make it stop. So the five of us head off to see what's up. There's a bard with scales tattooed on her wrists, and decked out from head to toe in miscellaneous clutter and bags and packets and pouches and extra-dimensional holding space. She's got so much random crap, she barely knows what to do with it. So people are just shouting out stuff and she's digging in her packs and, if not coming up with the exact item, coming up with something reasonably similar. People are throwing gold at her and she's stuffing it in the packs, and it's me. Or it's one of my old characters, a bard obsessed with dragons who has an item collection fixation. Squee. Anyway, we get what's going on. Martial gear like armors, weapons, magical items that might save our butts, are going to end up getting handed out based on who needs what. If you've got a crappy sword, she's going to dig around and find a better one, to try to help make sure we're all, everyone there, geared up for the fight as well as we could realistically be. After all, stuff is useless if you can't survive to enjoy it. Anything beyond that? Selling at discount prices. There's not enough gold in this part of the world to dent all the random crap she has stowed away. None of it's good to her if the world ends, and if we save the world she can at least go shopping herself later. So if you want something, you can go for it. A dwarf asks for dwarven ale, she apologetically says all she has is elven wine. His reply? Better and nothin'. 25 gold. He also turns out to be a drunken master. We can't think of anything particularly worth asking for, but she did wind up gearing us up along with everyone else, good armor, good weapons, good times. Good times which came to a sudden, and screeching halt, when a giant shadow passed over the courtyard. We look up. Yeah. Rotting dragon. Two of the kobolds scream, shrill and hard, while the others scatter. Even the shadowy one bound to Tenebris ran from the sight of the dragon. We all scattered, actually, but we're all high-level adventurers. We scattered with a plan. We had no plan. The archers opened fire on it. The Duskblade scrambled for the main door to the keep and shouted, "Get the mages out here now!" Then all hell breaks loose. We see, on top of the dragon, Eli, our ex-compatriot. The realization is sickening. If he managed to find the dragon, then, right as we're coming to the realization that he could have been getting a lot done, we see stuff cresting the hills in the distance, and pouring out of the passages we came through. Undead. A lot of sentient ones, and enough chambliers to make things interesting. Vestiges too. The only one we made out specifically was Paimon, the dancer, striking a pose on one blade arm at the pinnacle of one of the stone faces. The knights came out and started rallying everyone. We got all the gates and sealed up and supported. The archers opened fire on the undead pouring down the hills. The archivist came out and tried to shout to them to ignore the runners and hit the dragon first. Clerics started turning undead as the first of them hit the wall, and the dragon swooped in low. Bear in mind that, as usual, we largely get examples of what we see and react to, no raw tactical information. The dragon lights up the courtyard. One kobold fries to a crisp, the other manages to take partial damage from the flames and wises up and runs for cover with the other ones. The binders are shouting at everyone to get the ones bound to Tenebris inside the keep, and a few knights run in with them and start barricading the doors to keep them protected. Something explodes on the other side of the courtyard. We have no idea what it was, or if it was friend or foe. We get to the top of the outer walls. Oh dear God, we are screwed. The valley is flooding with undead. Which might be manageable, if it weren't for the much more dangerous unique enemies burning, slicing, rending, jumping, and screaming as they tear through the hordes to get to the walls. We hear the wizard's laugh echo through the valley. Damn him. We also can't help but feel partially responsible. If we hadn't come, there might have been more time to prepare. It was probably Eli that brought everyone here. We open fire on the crowds. The archivist opens with a storm of vengeance, straight to the big guns. I love it. The dragon dodges around the edge of the storm cloud and swoops in for another pass, once again filling the courtyard with fire. He gets hit with a few spells, but undead or not, he's still a dragon, and he starts circling around for another pass. There's screaming everywhere. There's blood everywhere. The rear of the keep sounds more violent than the area we're at, and we have a freaking storm of vengeance just outside the keep's walls. The archivist says we need to figure out some way to keep the dragon off our backs. And the dragon shaman gets the best line he had in the entire darn campaign. I'm on it. He sprints down from the wall, across the courtyard, takes a running leap up onto the wall over the place where the kobolds are hiding and starts spider climbing up. It takes him a few rounds to get up high, but he gets a lofty position, and jumps clean off the tower. And sprouts wings. And starts flying clockwise to intercept the dragon going counter. And spits a line of acid into the dragon's face, enraging it and making it follow him through the air while Eli misses with a ray spell of some kind. Oh hells yeah. Now the usual disclaimer applies. As this is going on, so too is other stuff. We're casting spells, firing crossbow bolts, lending aid to other adventurers, and generally trying to keep the keep in one piece. Describing everything that happens would take pages, and it would be like reading lines of code. I fired for 2d6 damage. He fired for 9d6 damage, ECT. So the fight continues. The dragon shaman actually pulls some really nice, off-the-books kinda stunts like swooping through the crowd of zombies and getting the area toasted with dragon breath as he makes a save to swoop back out of the area. I can't adequately describe it here in text, but I'll repeat for the third or fourth time, that it's nice to see someone get away from the numbers and get into the story. After a while of warring, and thinking, wow, we're doing surprisingly good, we start getting screamed at to fall back and get inside the second portion of the keep. The paladin shouts something about us holding the wall, and one of the other adventurers screams, the wall's already been breached in the rear. The courtyard is starting to fill with the undead. We start sprinting for the door. Some of the binder knights start throwing down walls of iron to buy us extra time. It made me physically sick to my stomach, and God knows what was going through the paladin's head, but we had to seal the doors before more than 3/4 of us made it back in. It wasn't an issue of bravery or cowardice. It was an issue of suicide or not. Nevertheless, my first course of action was to sprint headlong up the nearest stairs I could find, trying to get to some kind of window to yell to the dragon shaman to try to save someone, and to get himself in through the window as well. The adventurers try to start fortifying the doors as well as possible. The rest of my group runs towards where it looks like the ones bound to Tenebris are. They come to a locked door and hear screaming on the other side. After a number of strength checks, the paladin finally kicks in the door. The room they were in. Covered, wall to wall, in blood and viscera. There are exactly 2, Tenebris bound, left. The knights in the room protecting them. One of them turns to the group and says, calmly, praise Arcus. Son of a crap. Our group manages to keep the cultists, the lying, sneaking, devious bastards, from killing the last 2. Namely, by utterly maiming them beyond recognition, and then mutilating their corpses so thoroughly they can't return. They do the same to some of the dead, Tenebris bound, and manage to best the ones that have returned. Our archivist grabs the witch, ours, one of the only surviving ones, despite, or perhaps because of, being utterly bound in sturdy spider silk. The paladin grabs the other one, a shady, no pun intended, looking elf, and they all run deeper into the keep. The dragon shaman, alone, manages to get back into the keep through the window I was at, and me and him run off to try to find the rest of our group. We spent a long time exploring the maze-like stone and iron halls of the keep, until finally we come to what was likely the center. It's a massive stone chamber with 6 hallways leading down every direction, and a massive spiral staircase leading straight up. 4 of the knights, think they were Knights of Orthos, were charging up the spiral staircase. For lack of a better lead on where to find our friends, we charged up after them. We reached the top just as they were activating some kind of crystalline device, which immediately let loose a horrible gust of wind that threatened to deafen us, and then broke into 6 dark fragments. I asked what the hell they just did, and one of them turned to me and said, "We're not sure yet." In elaboration, it was revealed that that was the first step to opening a portal. A one-of-a-kind portal to a one-of-a-kind place. Nowhere. After some mage babble that my character couldn't understand, in character that is, they laid it out flat for us. They were basically going to open a portal inside out. The effect would be the destruction of the keep and a large chunk of the terrain around it, and the end result would, theoretically, be a passageway straight to, well, nothing. The portal wouldn't go anywhere. And why the hell did they want to do this? They figure if they toss all the living Tenebris-bound binder into the portal to nowhere, well, one of 2 things will happen. Either the binders will become quasi-vestiges themselves, unkillable creatures, permanently locking Tenebris away in the void, as some fragment of him could never permanently escape the sacrificial gates tossed his way. With the one the breach was intended for permanently trapped, it should naturally seal itself shut. Or, Tenebris will be unleashed, Arcus will become a god, 10,000 years of pain unimaginable, and then the end of creation. Wonderful. So I have to ask, what are the odds either way? Well, we have no way of knowing, at all, so. 50/50. Yeah. Great. Grand. Awesome. A 50% chance of utterly damning or potentially saving the world. Of course, even if it works in our favor, it won't solve the problem of everything already through the void. It'll just mean things will finally start staying dead. The dragon shaman asked the binder if he really thought that was a good idea. He just shrugged weakly, and said, "Please help us," handing each of us one of the 6 crystal fragments. Apparently, the location of the fragments would affect the size of the portal. They agreed to activate the portal in 5 minutes, on the dot, wherever the chips lay. The goal was to destroy the keep entirely, ensuring that the Tenebris bound inside would be sucked through it as well. What about the Tenebris bound being consigned to an eternity of nothingness? What about everyone else in the keep? Collateral damage. Somewhere, we heard the sound of iron wall groaning, maybe giving out. Ugh. What can we do though? We agree to help. We all go back down the spiral staircase, to the chamber with the hallways. The knights all charge off a hallway on their own, instructing us to get the crystals as far to each point as we possibly can. Then they're gone. We look at the crystals, at each other, and down the 2 hallways we're supposed to be running down. Our directions are northwest and southwest. I grab the crystal from the dragon shaman, and tell him to find as many people as possible. You've got 4.5 minutes. Get as many people as you can to head west, come hell or high water, and leave the binders in the keep. He asks what I think I'm doing, and I tell him I can handle both crystals. He needs to ensure there are survivors. So off I sprint, down one of the hallways, 2 crystals in tow. I figure I can get as far as I can in 3.5 minutes, go incorporeal and take the crystal a similar distance in the slightly off direction. That would leave things slightly off balance in that direction, giving any potential survivors a realistic chance to escape from the portal, as it would be off-center on the west side. The dragon shaman moved as fast as he could, a sprint the whole way, through the side door we came in and shouting for anyone still alive to answer him. He finds one of the kobolds cowering in a corner. He manages to grab it during his run. In the end, he found a handful of adventurers, and our group heard his shouting. He had a heck of a time convincing the archivist to leave the witch behind. The archivist kept swearing it was a trick, they were setting us up for the biggest fall of all. The dragon shaman couldn't even argue. All he said was, if it's a trick, we're doomed anyway. The archivist finally left the, now Cataionic, witch in a quiet room and booked it with everyone else. As they ran, barricades were failing everywhere. Zombies were pouring in through holes in the walls, opened doors, crawling in through high windows, Presumably they were so thick they were simply clawing over each other and through 12-foot-high fixtures. Eli was among them, and so were a number of vestiges. All they could do was run. The Arcanists managed to get enough people flying that between them holding people, the dragon shaman flying, and he was strong enough to carry the kobold and one other person, and the paladin riding Gold Widow, that they managed to get over the crowd of zombies for just long enough to give them a running chance for the edge of the valley. They lost numbers, but most of them made it to the point where they were sprinting for their lives. Then the dragon saw them. The dragon shaman took to the skies yet again, while those with enough magic left were hitting the thing from the ground while on the run. He fought it viciously, acid versus fire. And he dropped the sucker clean. Oh yeah. During the commotion, the paladin managed to down Eli. I know that sounds anticlimactic. But it wasn't. We were pumped up, cheering, the DM was dancing circles using magic, and the paladin finally leveled him with one heavy power attack. Practically turned him inside out. God yes. Meanwhile, I'm running through maze-like halls with 2 black crystals, trying to keep track of the time close enough that I know when to drop one and worry about the other. Finally I reach that point, throw down the crystal, and start running in a reasonable direction, southish. Then I get hit, hard, with a fist to the side of the head. I go sprawling, the crystal goes sliding in the wrong direction, and a nimble but malformed shape dances between me and it. I move to get up, and I see the rogue vestige standing between me and the crystal. I know your tricks, rogue. I drammed half of them up, it says with a creepy smile. Its arms are a blur. Its hands, there are numerous, all have black daggers. I try to get around him, but he's too fast for me to stand a chance, dancing circles around me and taunting me. It says again, I know all your tricks. Finally my brain clicks, and I don't see why I didn't think of it before. I don't even know all of my tricks. Then I go incorporeal, dash past him, turn solid, grab the crystal, and ghost once again through a wall while he stabs at me, caught me twice, more brutal hits, I'm low on hit points actually. I hear his scream echo as he dashes down one of the maze-like halls to try to catch up with me. It's a pretty even race, actually. He's fast as a bolt of lightning, but I'm shortcutting through solid stone. Finally, I realize that I'm running out of time. I stash the crystal in a hiding spot, and bolt westward. We never did find out exactly how the portal got activated. None of the other Binder Knights were ever seen again. But with a sickening groan, the world shuddered, and suddenly everything felt a lot emptier. For some reason? I expected it to happen instantly. It didn't. The keep started to groan, and fall apart from the inside out. The portal was starting dead center, and spreading outwards. Crap. So we're dashing west, not knowing how far it'll come, hoping it'll stop at the crystals. Of course, I'm lagging behind everyone else, I'm the one who was placing the crystals. I didn't want to look back, but I couldn't help it. Behind us, consuming the keep, was just an inky black void. Blacker than a starless sky, blacker than the blackest nightmare of negative energy and darkness. It was an aggressive blackness. Nothingness. Iron fell, stone crumbled, and the very earth gave way. Wind rushed past us into the pit, threatening to suck us back towards it. It was so powerful. Finally, with another groaning shudder, it stopped. We could still hear the moans of the zombies around us. We were sitting precariously on a hill, the bottom of which was a pit of terrible emptiness. And at the edge of the pit, 2 scrabbling figures. The rogue vestige. And a silk-wrapped cocoon with a face. Crap. Then that sickening guilty feeling. If I'd gotten the crystals farther, none of us would have survived, but neither would the vestige and the binder. The rogue had a strand and was trying to pull her away from the pit. That boded well for us, in the sense that the rogue was obviously afraid of her falling into the void for some reason. Bad for us, because he could kill her the second he got back to safe ground. No chance to hesitate. I ran, moving like I was going to tackle him. The rogue vestige noticed me, and with a sick grin, pulled out a dozen daggers from thin air, ready for me. I was ready for him. I went incorporeal at the last second, slid past him and tackled the cocoon. The vestige howled in rage. Sliding along with the 2 of us down the rocky slope into the void, holding the silk strand fiercely. The cocoon came to rest on a rock, I gave the strand a sharp tug, and we got stuck in a tug-of-war match. For a moment. Then the bard came dashing behind him and threw an elbow into the back of his head, staggering him, throwing him off balance long enough for me to pull and send the rogue screaming over the edge, with me wrapped up in the cord. The paladin came charging down too. The archivist, wisely, held the dusk blade back and screamed at the survivors to stay back from the edge of the pit. The dragon shaman tried to take to the sky to come help us, but the wind was too strong. He moved to chase after us, but he was way too late. The void was closing. The rogue was screaming, holding his end of the silk strand. The cocoon was dangling on the other end, the middle stuck on a rock. I was clinging to both strands, trying to pull myself up it in time. The paladin tried to pull me up, but the combined weight of me, the vestige, and the cocoon/witch, he couldn't quite do it. In fact, the ground crumbled and he fell down next to me, clinging to my side, and I started slipping down. Paladin, let go. Me, don't you dare. I can't make it anyway. The vestige slipped. He didn't fall. He just hung there, glaring at us angrily, cursing at us the entire time as he faded from existence. The bard tried to pull us up, but couldn't even come close. So he started climbing down the strand, casually. Me, what in the nine hells are you doing? Him, coming with you? Me, you don't have to do this. You can save yourself. Him, but you're the flute finder. And it's dark, and you'll need light. Me, you can't light this place. Him, then I'll keep you company. I couldn't argue. Whether he understood or not, he wasn't going back. The void started to close. The wind reached a peak, so ferocious we couldn't even hear each other. And the last of the light slipped away as the portal closed, and suddenly, we weren't hanging. We were just floating there. The paladin looked up at me. You know what's funny? Me, what could possibly be funny right now? Paladin, I didn't even use any of my extra lives. I started crying, borderline for real. The bard played his flute nonchalantly. And then there was nothing. And, the end. I mean, sort of. Epilogue. Then the DM started the epilogue. The survivors, including 3 of our party, had a small but uneventful fight with Paimon. He danced around them, aggressively at first, then cautiously, then he started reacting to something they couldn't detect. In the end, he backed away from them in fear and climbed over the stone face they were near, disappearing quickly. He was afraid of them, because the breach was closing. When he dies now, he'll return to the void. Trapped once more. The same holds true of every vestige still in the world, every undead creature still shambling. The world is not fixed. But now it can be fixed. Existence is no longer fighting a losing battle. Whether or not the world can be saved remains a question mark, but at least no more ground is being lost. The Duskblade said something about Paimon, the dancer, getting away. The archivist just replied calmly that it didn't matter. It was only a matter of time now, before the fight was settled. One way or another. A somber but realistic conclusion. The dragon shaman asked the kobold he was carrying if he was okay, and it replied yes master. Made the dragon shaman snicker, and flutter his wings proudly. The DM informed the 3 of us lost to the pit. We've become vestiges. Full-blown contactable vestiges. We're working on them as homebrew vestiges currently, and the paladin is probably done and ready to play with. Me and the bard still need to be finished though. What's cool is that the DM is going to gladly let us use those vestiges anytime we play binders, so as tragic of an ending as it is, it's still also fairly cool. Then the DM went around the table, asking the survivors what happens to their characters. All of them, of course, are going to band together to try to locate and protect survivors, as well as laying waste to as many undead as possible to try to restore some kind of balance. The Duskblade is going to go back to being a teacher, but with training focusing on martial combat and spell casting. A swashbuckling Duskblade Academy, with special courses on combating the undead. The Dragon Shaman is going to focus partially on nature, and on the wilderness. Once again looking for survivors, tracking down any undead dragons as a result of this catastrophe and destroying them, and trying to find living animals to group them up together and keep them safe until nature is strong enough to return to normal. He'll also probably wind up with a number of kobolds helping him in the matter. The archivist is going to particularly focus on restoring whatever remains of his church are around, and destroying the undead. Dark knowledge and divine magic are very handy for things like that. The next part, I'm gonna try to remember everything he said. I write a 2,500-page treatise on the nature and evils of pact magic, including how to identify binders and other practitioners of pact magic to avoid something like this ever happening again. No one ever bothers to read the entire thing, but everyone says they agree with it entirely, and a copy of it exists in almost every sect of my church. Included in the book, as examples of dangerous pact magic, are explicit step-by-step instructions for summoning and binding 3 vestiges. Despite my hatred of pact magic, I've at least ensured that my friends will always have a way to experience the material world, hidden forever in plain sight. Probably not word for word, but that's the gist of it. Yeah. He rocks. So that's that. A lot of candy, a lot of tragedy, and 3 new vestiges. I hope it was a satisfactory read, and that I didn't bore anyone too much with the way I tend to ramble. Thanks for being interested in it, smiley face. And sweet God, I hope it made sense. Edit. Again with the little details. One thing I'd like to point out. I don't know if it mattered or not, but our DM kept flipping a coin every now and then. Either he had multiple paths laid out, or he just wanted to make us sick with worry.